Okay, then let's get the show on the road. So welcome everybody, this is Final Fantasy 1, any percent for the PlayStation Portable. Now right off the bat, you're gonna see me buy this hammer, and you know, hammers are not particularly good equipment, but we have a little glitch in this version that's going to allow me to make some pretty neat stuff out of that. So because I have the hammer as my weapon, in the PSP version you can actually dupe a weapon, or you can dupe pieces of equipment as well as change them to a piece of equipment with the same ID. So for example, right there I got myself the hammer, which has the same ID as the knight's armor, because of which I now have knight's armors on everybody's gloves. So right off the bat, we've pretty much got a defense that's not going to really be beatable until like at least halfway through the game. Up until that point, pretty much everything will just be doing 1 damage now that we have that. Not to mention, I mean, we've got it set up on our gloves. I don't really know how it works with having a piece of armor on your glove, but you know, it apparently works. Now that we have this piece of fantastic little armor, I also got an extra one just for selling so I could get some healing items. So we're immediately just gonna make way for the first boss. Now, along the way, you'll notice a lot of encounters, and most of the RNG in this game just comes down to how many encounters you get, what kind of encounters, and how bad they are. So far I've only been seeing some goblins. You know, goblins, not particularly bad. They're generally very easy to run from. There are also some encounters here that we'll probably see as we go along, that are a lot more difficult. Now, I'm not immediately going for the first boss. I'm first gonna get this leather cap. I mean, we don't really have a helmet yet, so maybe I can equip some helmets. Now, it just so happens that much like the hammer from before, the leather cap transforms into the Judgment Staff, which is, I believe, the most powerful staff of the game. You regularly get it from, or it's a drop from Atomos, one of the bonus bosses in Lifespring Grotto, so it's endgame stuff that we pretty much get. And with that staff, we're now going to Garland. So this is Garland. He's kidnapped the princess, and now he wants to, because he wants to take over the world and all that. It's a very straightforward story, really. We're just gonna, you know, fight this guy. He's a chump. Don't you worry about him. See there, that's Garland done. That's the first boss of the game. So now that we have the staffs, I mean, with, like I said, the most powerful staff in the game, we deal a good bit of damage. The staff itself, I mean, staffs aren't particularly strong for attacking, but compared to the knives I held before, this staff does a good bit of damage. Now, it also has a little bit of a side effect that I'm going to show off in a couple minutes, which is unique to this staff and just goes to show how incredibly overpowered we are, even though we're only a few minutes in. So I'm going to talk to this princess here. She's going to give us the loot. The loot doesn't seem too relevant. It's actually not relevant until about 10 minutes before the end of the game. But for that point, we do actually need it. And with that, we're just going to get a little bit of a cutscene here. Now, I want to take special attention to the guy in the bottom left. So all these guys are going to work hard to restore our bridge so we can continue our journey and save the world. Something along those lines. The guy in the bottom left, though, he's a little bit lazy. And, I mean, everybody's working hard fixing that bridge, but the guy right there, he's just very slowly waving his arm around. I mean, he's not really a team player. It gets... I mean, I don't really know why they still have that kind of guy hired for building bridges, but, you know, minor stuff. Yeah, the original game was for the NES. There's been some remakes since then. There's the Origins version for PlayStation 1. There is the Dawn of Souls version for the GBA, and then the 20th anniversary for the PSP. I'll touch on all of those categories a little bit later on in the run. So we just got into the first ambush of the game. So other than just regularly getting into a fight, there's 2 other ways you can get a fight. It can either be a preemptive, which means, well, for a speedrun perspective, it means it's guaranteed to run away, which is pretty convenient, you know? Also, this little cutscene is only skippable in the PSP version, so we're just gonna skip it. Saves about 1.5 minutes. And then there's the ambushes, which means all the enemies get a turn before me, which, you know, it's not really convenient because it wastes a lot of time because of all their attack animations. Now, these are some wolves. Wolves are actually one of the worst encounters early on in the game. By a lot of runners consider this guy one of the worst enemies to get in the game in general. We don't really have any items yet that would help me run away yet. We're gonna get that, but we can't just get that for now. So getting into a wolf encounter can waste a lot of time because it's pretty difficult to run away from them. We're just slowly going. It's called the 15 puzzle. Basically, if you get a second place prize, which you get if you get a time between half a minute and a minute, we've got a 1 in 6 chance to get an emergency exit, which saves about 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes. So let's see if we can get that, shall we? Let's just do that for the memes. So this is 15 puzzle. We don't normally do this in runs anymore because on average it's actually slower in the PSP version because of that 1 in 6 chance for it to actually drop what I need. You know, this run, it'd take about 3 turns to kill them with just regular attacks, so this is significantly faster than having to do it that way. We're just gonna head out here. Now, I could do a little bit of a mini puzzle in the ship, but the problem is, you know, you know what? No. It's because this is a marathon, let's actually go for that. I'll show it off in a little bit. So, on the ship, there is a little mini game. It's called the 15 puzzle. Basically, if you get a second place prize, which you get if you get a time between half a minute and a minute, we've got a 1 in 6 chance to get an emergency exit, which saves about 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes. So let's see if we can get that, shall we? Let's just do that for the memes. So this is 15 puzzle. We don't normally do this in runs anymore because on average it's actually slower in the PSP version because of that 1 in 6 chance for it to actually drop what I need. You know, since it's a marathon, let's see how we do, and let's see if we can actually get this very rare but very much sought after prize. I need to get a time between half a minute and a minute in order to get it though, so let's see if we can. We didn't get it, unfortunately. So I was looking for an emergency exit there. It's a 1 in 6 drop, so it's not too rare, or it's not too uncommon to get it, but it's not too common either. It's just a minute, so it's not a huge deal by any means. Now while I'm going on my way to Marsh Cave, I'm going to actually heal up my characters. I won't be healing them up to full much. There's only a few times that we're gonna do that. This is still, like, this is a reasonable moment to heal up, and we probably won't be healing up until after we've finished grinding, about 45 to 50 minutes into the game. There's a very, very short grinding section. It's only like 1.5 minutes. And with that, we're on our way to the Marsh Cave, and so a little bit about what we need to do. So we need to, in order to travel back in time to fight Garland again, we need to resurrect not resurrect, but we need to get back the light of the 4 crystals. There's 4 crystals: earth, water, wind, and fire, and we need to, you know, get in touch with those crystals again. Now, in order to do that, we actually need to gain access to a piece of the ocean we can't access with our ship yet. But it just so happens that some dwarves are actually working on opening up the path so that we could go there. Problem is, they need a nitro powder, like the kind of TNT in this game. And we could get that. It's in our starting town, but it's behind a locked door, and we can only get that with the Mystic Key. Now, the Mystic Key is held by the Elven Princess, or Elven Prince. So we could just go ask him. That would be easy. Unfortunately, he's been cursed, so he's asleep right now, and we need the Jolt Tonic in order to wake him up. Now, in order to get the Jolt Tonic, we could just get that from Matoya. But Matoya, she's blinded because she doesn't have her eye anymore, the crystal eye. And that being said, we need to find that crystal eye, which is held by Astos. Now, Astos will only fight us for it if we actually get him the crown, which would make him very, very powerful for some reason. We're gonna get that crown now, and then do all of that just so that we can give the TNT to the Emperor. So this early part is just a whole bunch of fetch questing that we're gonna do. Well, we're beating bosses this quickly because we've got some very, very overpowered equipment. There is an equipment glitch in this game. I'll be showing that off a few more times later on. But basically, because of our fantastic equipment, we don't really need to worry about levels. So with that, we've got the crown, so we can now make way for Astos. And Astos, I mean, he's a mean little guy, but he's not too far away from the Marsh Cave. Now, in a segmented run or in a task, you'd probably get more than one emergency exit, and you'd actually just teleport out of this place. But we don't have that. Luckily, the encounter rate is very low, so we don't really need to worry about it. And we're back out already. So, we're gonna head to the Western Keep, which is where Astos lives. It's just a small walk north from here. And then we're going into a very interesting little boss fight. Astos is one of the more optimized bosses. So for a lot of the game, we can just use the Judgment Staff, just bop them over the head, and they're easily going to die, like you saw with the Garland fight. There's some bosses where that's a little bit more tricky. Oh, this is actually about position? Okay, we're good. So, Astos wouldn't die just by, me bopping him over the head, so we've actually designed some strats that we can pretty consistently one-turn the fight, unless he uses Death, which is a move that could instantly kill a character. And this is the Western Keep. It's kind of in ruins, but I mean, this is where Astos lives, so he's the only guy that lives here other than some bats. So he's the Dark Elf Astos, and he wants to rule over the Elven Kingdom. He wants to become the true Elven King. But he can only do that with both the Mystic Eye and the Crown, which is why he wanted the Crown from us. So I'm going to attack with those two, and I'm going to staff with both of the mages. And let's see what he throws at me. If that hits, it might become a 2-turn. That might be a little annoying. We can work with this. It's not a huge deal. I need my White Mage to get a good roll. That's not a good roll. The White Mage usually hits either around 100 somewhere or around 200 somewhere. So this is probably, that's not going to one-shot or one-turn him. That's unfortunate. It's about 85% to one-turn him, so we got a pretty unlucky Astos fight, but it's not a huge deal. He dies pretty quickly afterwards. And that's Astos done. There we go. So now that he's dead, we get the Crystal Eye, and we can bring that to Matoya so she can get her sight back, and we can get that Jolt Tonic to wake up the Elven Prince. Saying it like that, it sounds awfully complicated, doesn't it? Oh, I didn't mean to heal the warrior. That's fine, actually. So, generally I want my health to be at around 70 by the time I get to Evil Eye. I can easily get back to 70. And even if not, there's a way to get it down just a little bit if need be. So it's not a huge deal that I overhealed a little bit there. It's a very, very minor little loss, if any. So we could, we've got the Mystic, or the Mystic Eye, or the Crystal Eye. Now, Matoya, she does not live right around the corner, unfortunately. She's all the way north, almost, like, we've passed the starting towning, and this, by the way, is the Elven Castle. We're not really gonna bother with the Elven Castle. I mean, it's fun and all, but there's not really much we need to look for just yet. Also, this is... okay. Ogres are generally very easy to run from, so that kind of took me by surprise there. So we're gonna have to do some sailing. Unfortunately, since we still don't have anything that would make it easier for me to run, there is actually a lot of bad encounters, like this one for that matter, that would be pretty annoying to get. The Sahagan Big Eyes they don't so much kill runs, but they do kill them in the sense of time. You can lose minutes to one of those things if you get unlucky. And we got 2 of them already, so this is not too lucky so far. Okay, he's gonna target the same person, so I'm going to still try to run away. That's a little bit risky, but we should be fine. There we go. So, around this area, you'll notice that I'm going to try to avoid the forest as much as possible. Within the PSP community, we have a hunch that the forest has a bit of a higher encounter rate than plains do. So generally we try to avoid forest as much as we can without taking any extra steps. There's a small path near the top there that has a lot of plains. And with that, we're in Matoya's cave, and I want to make note of the little brooms you see walking around here, because there's a lot of history going on with those little brooms. Now, you'd think they're just brooms, what the hell could be interesting about that? But they can actually block the door and lose me 30 seconds if I get unlucky. And back when the world record of this game was around a 131-ish, a French runner, Osabe, he actually lost the world record, or quote-unquote lost the world record, to him being trolled by the broom. It's very rare, but it happens from time to time. So we're just gonna head back again to the Elven Castle. We're almost done with this fetch questing, and then we can actually get the show on the road. We need a little bit more for now. We're just gonna have to head to the Elven Castle, and then we can finally go pick up the Nitro Powder. So one more piece. This is the last piece of sailing before I actually get some items that will increase my chances of running. So after this, it'll get a little bit easier, and we can kind of mitigate the RNG a bit. At least a bit better than we could so far.
Oh, also, is there any time to just announce that we got another $8 from Patrick Power 2013? He says, for dying and getting hit 30 times in his Mario Kart Wii race.
Well, Patrick, thank you for the amazing donation, supporting the great charity. So this is the Elven Prince. We now delivered the Joel tonic, and he's finally woken up, and he now gives us the Mystic Key. So we finally have the key to get to that item we've been looking for all along. But before we do, there's a little item in the castle here that I want to grab first. Now I went out on the side. It's a couple steps faster to exit the castle and re-enter. So this is the hammer, the Mithril hammer, and we can actually use that to get some thieves' armlets. And while I'm doing this menu, it might be a good moment to explain a little bit about what this menu is like. So basically, I'm just pressing X and L at the same time. So I'm going into the menu, and at the same time switching character. And what that does is, because I'm switching from a weapon slot to the armor slot, it loads the ID of the armor that corresponds with it. Now, I can use that to do some pretty cool stuff. There's my lightsabers. Hold on. Okay. So I can do that to do some pretty cool stuff. I can equip items that I couldn't normally equip, such as, for example, the Knight's Armor, which I equipped to a White Mage, which definitely can't wear a Knight's Armor naturally. I can duplicate items with this, and of course I can transform the items into a different item. So back in Cornelia Castle, this is where we're finally going to get the nitro powder, which we're going to use to blow up the canal and finally get a move on the first of the 4 crystals. And there it is. So this is the nitro powder. It was in the castle all along. Why the king wouldn't just unlock the door, that's beyond me, but, you know, he's stubborn, he's dumb, he just didn't want to do that for us, even though he went through the trouble of building an entire bridge, but, you know. We finally got it anyway, so let's get a move on it. Let's go to that dwarven castle we mentioned. Getting a really good preemptive there. That encounter can be particularly nasty to get early on. We do have the additional agility now, because every knight's, or every thief's armlet that I just equipped grants me 5 extra agility, and since I have 3 on every character, both on helmet, armor, as well as gloves, I get an additional 15 agility per character, making running significantly easier. That being said though, running can still be a pain, and it's still, you know, it just matters how many encounters do you get, how many of them are ambushes, it's all very random. Times tend to vary by quite a few minutes, even with the same level of execution. Okay, we're almost at the dwarven. So this is Mount Duragar, this is where the dwarves live. And, you know, like I said, they're trying to blow up the canal so that they can finally connect the oceans and make ship trading a lot easier. Why that bothers them, I have no idea, but okay. I mean, I can use it. It makes it easier for me to get to the next town and actually get to the first crystal. Now, an interesting thing to note about the crystals, there's 4, like I said, there's 4 crystals in the game: fire, earth, water, and air. The order you do them in, you can mostly decide for yourself. The only condition being that the earth crystal is the first one. The game will not grant you the canoe, because of which you can't access any of the other crystals without having done at least the earth crystal. So we're gonna have to do that one first by default. If that wasn't the case, we could potentially do some really interesting sequence breaking, which would skip like 3 floors of a dungeon, if not more, but that's unfortunately not possible. Okay, so he finally moves away, and let's get a move on it. So now that we have a little bit of downtime, I think it might be a good moment to kind of explain why I picked these party members. So I picked a very specific party, which is actually corresponding with pretty much the party the game suggests you. Each of the characters actually have a very interesting reason why we pick them. The white mage, naturally for healing, because the final boss is pretty difficult without a white mage, and the black mage is just there for teleport. But the other 2, the warrior and the thief, well, the warrior, you'd think, okay, that would be your main damage dealer, would be a useful character, but he's actually not. The thief is the more powerful character here, and that's because of a very interesting equipment glitch that we're going to do here. So I just bought myself the steel gloves, and only the warrior can equip it, which is why I need the warrior, and I can change that into the barbarian sword. Now, for those that have played the original version, you might remember swords such as the Masamune or Excalibur. You know, the powerful equipment that the game grants you very much near the end of the game. To give a bit of a comparison, the Barbarian sword is about 3 times as powerful as the next best sword, being the Masamune. I believe Masamune having a base power of 45 and the Barbarian sword of 135. So it's pretty powerful. On top of that, it also grants the player or the user a strength boost of 15, which makes it even more powerful. Now, to be fair, the normal way of getting it would be by defeating the super boss, or the hardest version of the super boss of this game, Cronodia 203. which is only accessible once you've already beaten all the 4 elemental fiends, you've managed to reach the final dungeon, well, just before the final dungeon. And then you need to go through the hardest cave in the entire game as well, so it's really nasty to get. But it's quite the reward as well. Normally only the warrior could equip it, but because of the glitch I can just have it on everybody. And I can have it even though I'm like 20-ish minutes into the game, 20-25 minutes. So if there are by any chance any other donations, I think now would be a good time. Well, I'm not hearing back, so I'm assuming that... Oh. Okay, something is going on. Not really sure what that was. To whomever just unlocked his microphone, something sounds like it's not exactly correct. See, I think your mic is acting up. Don't worry about it, sir. You just figure it out. We have plenty of time later on for donations if there were any. So this is B3.
Actually, my Discord crashed right then.
Oh,
sorry.
Okay. Yeah, no worries. No worries. It's all good. So this is the first moment in the game where I'm actually going to save. There's a few points in the game where the game actually, even though we have insanely overpowered equipment, the game can still find ways to kill us off. On this particular floor, there is an encounter called the Cockatrice, which has a chance of petrifying characters. Upon hit, they have like I believe like a 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 chance to petrify a character. Now, the thing with the cockatrices is, like, normally it's not a big threat, because I can kill them pretty quickly. But let's say 4 of them were to ambush me, and would all 4 happen to just petrify a character before I got to do anything, that'd just be rip run. It's not... It hasn't happened a lot, but it's happened to a couple runners. So I'm not gonna risk that in a marathon, obviously, so we're just gonna take like 5 seconds to take a safety save. Oh wow, that elixir actually really threw me off. I almost used the elixir instead. I'm not used to having an elixir here, which is probably going to throw me off a few more times. So this is a famous encounter, the White Ghast. Whites and Ghast have once killed a run of mine while on pace for console world record, so it's probably one of my most hated encounters, but with them out of the way, we're going for the next boss. This is the vampire. He's protecting, you know, the way to Lich. And that was the vampire. He was protecting the way to Lich, but he's a bit of a chump. So that's the vampire done. Now, I would continue this dungeon, but unfortunately the way is blocked, and I need to get the earth rod in order to actually progress here. Now that means I have to go all the way out of this dungeon again, walk to this sage, and he will give me the earth rod. But I can't get there unless I have the star ruby, which is why I needed to go down here first. Now this is that emergency exit strat that I tried earlier where I did the 15 puzzle. Had I gotten the drop, I would have used it here, and I would have now teleported out. You can probably see why that would save quite a few minutes to use it, because I wouldn't have to backtrack all the way. On average, an average walkout is about 2 minutes, so it's not a huge amount of time. But we are in for quite a long haul here, so let me talk about the history of this game a little bit, because this game has got quite an interesting history. So about I personally entered this game, or in this category, about 8 months ago, roughly, maybe 9. And at the time, the route at the time was actually very different. The world record had been on the name of Lenefis, which is the current number 2 on console after myself. He had held the world record for, I'd say, about 2.5 years, 2 to 2.5 years at the time. And then the Final Fantasy, nobody really ran this game, but then the Final Fantasy Relay came along, so some people started to run this again. Chrono Kirby who is another former world record holder of this game, the current number 2 in the world, among other people. And we started to do a lot of races, and we came up with a lot of little things we could change in the route. We were like, okay, what if we skip this item, or we get that item, or we don't grind till level 33, but instead just grind till, you know, lower levels and see how far we can get. And that all worked pretty well, actually. We got up with a lot of round changes, but the world record had stayed the same for the longest time. In part because we actually started skipping Thieves' Armlets, which I got earlier, which helps me run, which slowed us down again. And then we started looking into the all bosses category. We were like, okay, we can probably do something like full bestiary, which had been done on NES already. But we figured, you know, we can do that for a PSP. Until we figured out that would mean having to do Labyrinth of Time 8 times, and would be like a 15-hour run at the very least. Or so we thought, at least. So we were like, yeah, let's not do that. We'll instead just go for something along the lines of an all bosses category, where we do have to fight the super boss once, but not 8 times. And when we routed that, we actually started looking into potentially doing class change again, which was skipped before then, which ended up saving even more time, because it meant we could skip a lot of grinding. We'd only have to go to level 18, or rather 18 and a half, instead of level 33, which skipped a ton of grinding. It really made the run a lot more interesting, it made it a lot less boring, and significantly faster too. And since then, like, minor changes have made, there have been a lot of new people to the run, and the time has just gone down to, like, by a little over 10 minutes from what the original record was at the time. Lenofist, currently the world record holder at the time, now being, I believe, 7th in time. So there have been a lot of people that just managed to beat those times. And he still runs himself as well. He got console world record back for a little while, or not too long ago. That was the Earth Rod, by the way. That was just a whole long walk, which, you know, we just need to do a whole lot of tracking around to finally get to the Lich. So, yeah, as I was saying, like, once we got that route, at some point Chrono Kirby managed to finally beat Lenofist's time, but Lenofist still had the console world record at least, and it wasn't until, like, I believe like 2 months later until I had finally managed to beat it on console. And since then a lot has changed still, because we've had a Final Fantasy tournament recently which got a ton of new runners. Times over the entire board has been going down, and like the record, what it was at the time, we pretty much everybody manages to beat it fairly easily these days. So we're almost back in Cavern of Earth, and with that we're finally going to make way for the first crystal. So the first 2 crystals, I say, take very long. After once we get started on the second crystal, the rest of the game goes by very quickly. This game tends to pick up fairly slowly. Fortunately, we're getting some more wolves here. On the upside, at least my health is looking good for later on in the game, so I won't need to purposely bring it down further. So this is actually the last time that we're going to have to do Cavern of Earth. Luckily too, because we've already done this floor like 3 times at this point. Really good floor too, though. Really good start of this cave. We're looking very good here. Very happy with how this is going. So again, making a safety save here, just in case I get that very rare Cockatrice ambush. Personally, it's never happened to me that I've actually lost a run here, but I've seen people lose runs to it, and you just don't want to lose 10 minutes of that in a marathon. Actually getting really good floors here. This is Final Fantasy 1 at its finest, I'd like to say. Cavern of Earth is, along with a couple other dungeons later on, are generally where runs start to differ in time. You can lose, because of the size of the dungeon, you can lose a lot of time, or gain a lot of time, especially in races and stuff. So this is a really good Cavern of Earth so far, so let's see how it treats us the last bit of the way. So Lich is on B5, which is the next floor, and B5 is the shortest floor as well. So we're practically at the first, like, pretty much the first main boss of the game. So Lich is the guy that protects the Earth Crystal, and for each of the crystals, in order for us to get there, we need to beat some elemental archfiend. Lich being the one to protect the Earth Crystal, Merilith for fire, Kraken for water, and Tiamat for air. Now, Lich is... This
also,
is another
the
fight
next time
where...
you're available, I want to... we have a donation.
Okay, well, sure, go ahead.
Okay, we have a donation from... where did it go? The name just went away. But a $50 donation from Graham Bullard with no comment. But thank you to Graham Bullard. That's even matching and going above what we already had.
That is
total. So
an incredible donation.
Overall
Thank you very
donation
much for that.
Yeah, that brings the overall donation count to $94. So we're almost at 1/5 of our goal, which is the goal we were hoping to achieve with this entire marathon is $500.
So we still have... that is mighty impressive right there. Thank you very much for that donation.
Yeah, we have 30 hours left to get another $100. So
nice. So that was...
And also we just got another $1 from Croco, bringing it up to $95.
Nice.
So thanks to you, Croco, too. Even the small donations all count.
You know, they add up over time, and all the little donations can make quite a big difference. So that was the first main boss of the game. You might have noticed that I saved before, and Lich actually has a reasonable chance of killing me. It's fairly rare, but it can happen quite a lot. And I remember during the tournament finals of this game, he actually killed me twice here, so it can be very annoying, especially if you haven't saved there. We get to see the unlocking of the first bonus dungeon, the Earth Gift Shrine, which we're not actually going to see in this run. It's something you only really touch in the all bosses in full bestiary category. By the way, how are we looking on time roughly? See.
As in, like, the time of your run currently?
Yes.
We're at 37.5 minutes.
That is not bad at all, considering I did 15 puzzle. Generally,
And
the
also,
Lich time is a place where we tend to, get an idea of what kind of time, because you can die. For example, that Lich fight earlier. It's only a one-turn fight, but you can lose a couple minutes if he decides to just kill you 3 times in a row. And trust me, that has happened before.
And Croco wants me to read the comment for the $1 donation. It says, "Oh, ooh, Joe, ooh, which is apparently the lyrics to a song called Brain Power."
Right. Okay, interesting comment, Croco. So you might start noticing, like, running at this point, it becomes a little bit more difficult, but we're actually going to get a little bit of an upgrade for our Thieves' Armlets here. There is an item in a little bit that we can get that would give us a decent upgrade for it. We're gonna buy some ethers. We won't really need them until near the end of the game, but they're convenient to have around. And I'm gonna buy a mithril axe here. Now, because the warrior is the only one that can equip it, the next item that would help me run, I can't actually equip it on the warrior, but I can equip it on everybody else, which is what I'm going to do in a little bit. It's kind of runner preference whether you do it on 2 characters and not do it on the white mage, which saves an extra upgrade for it. We're gonna buy some ethers. We won't really need them until near the end of the game, but they're convenient to have around. And I'm gonna buy a mithril axe here. Now, because the warrior is the only one that can equip it, the next item that would help me run, I can't actually equip it on the warrior, but I can equip it on everybody else, which is what I'm going to do in a little bit. It's kind of runner preference whether you do it on 2 characters and not do it on the white mage, which saves an extra formation, or 2 extra formation changes. But it makes it a little bit more risky. I have a preference of just playing it out a little bit safer. Getting the black garbs. Oh, this is okay. There we go. Getting the black garbs on all 3 characters. Okay, this is a pretty sloppy menu so far. For the record, the glitch itself is frame perfect. It really comes down to press 2 buttons on the same frame, but it is still a frame perfect glitch, so to speak. So it can be a little tricky from time to time. So now that we have the canoe, we don't have to walk all the way around anymore, and we can finally head towards. Well, the game would expect us to just head towards the fire crystal next. That would make sense. The guy in the town, he tells us that we can use the canoe to get to the fire crystal. We're not gonna do that. This is the first moment where we're kind of use the ability to sequence break in our advantage, because we can save about 1.5 minutes of canoeing to 2 minutes of canoeing just by doing the dungeons in a slightly different order. And I mean, so we're gonna enter a dungeon that would technically be a bit above our level, but I mean, we've not really level grinded at any point to begin with, and our equipment is very overpowered anyway. So, you know, we might as well. I might want to add, this next dungeon is the most deadly dungeon in the game. Runs tend to die here. I'll explain in a bit what's actually this bad about the dungeon, but there is a lot of bad stuff. First, though, we actually need to reach the dungeon, and now as a safety, there is 4 points in the dungeon that I'm going to save. First off, being right at the start, just in case I die, so that at worst I get set back a minute or 2. So there's a couple encounters here that can ruin a good run. But first of all, there is a 1 in 64 encounter. It's a very rare encounter, but it's called a white dragon, and if I were to get it, well, it could pretty much one-shot my entire party. Then the next rarest encounter, the 3 in 64 encounter, is a dark wizard, which pretty much have the same ability. If they get a move off and they decide to use Faraga, that's just end of story. It one-shots my entire party. Now then there's these guys, the cockatrices, which are a fair bit more common, which on an ambush have a very small chance of, like before, petrifying all of my characters, which could also kill the run. There's some mind flyers. Oh, come on, really? 2 ambushes already? This is really unlucky, actually. Let's hope that actually doesn't happen this marathon, and I won't actually have to use those safety saves. This is pretty unlucky at this point. No, okay, that's fine. That's fine. Okay, so this is what I meant with that's why we save. So, like I said, that's pretty much worst case scenario, getting ambushed by those things and then dying. It can lose anywhere between a couple seconds and minutes, depending on where you die. This was only a very quick death because it was fairly early on in the dungeon. So that's one of the things. Then there's mind flyers, which have the ability to paralyze everybody actually in the first turn too. And on top of that, they have the ability to kill on hit. It's not very common to die on them, but it can happen as well. And then lastly, there is still the Pisco Demons, which we saw just now. Pisco Demons aren't particularly dangerous in any way. They're just slow because you actually have to kill them. They are the first encounter in the game which has an unrunnable flag on them, so as soon as I enter or if I get an encounter with them, there's no way for me to actually run away, and I have to kill them. There's a few more encounters like it later on. I'll try to point them out as we go along. And these things, they can mostly just waste a lot of time. Spectres, Ghasts, Wraiths, Ghouls, they all have the ability to paralyze on hit, which could paralock you. This is another unrunnable pack. This is actually a very rare unrunnable pack too. It's not too common to see that in Cavern of Ice. Well, it is an extra level, so no worries. We're about to come up on the next point where I usually save. If the encounter would let me. So yeah, this is about as bad as Cavern of Ice can go, pretty much. I've had a really unlucky cavern so far. This dungeon, it tends to be one of the bigger run killers, at least in sense of time, just because of that kind of stuff. So this is where we save. The next tile I'm going to walk on is going to give me an encounter. It's guaranteed, it always does that. And it's always going to be a pack of Wraiths, Spectres, Ghasts, Ghouls, you know, all sorts of nasty undead stuff. Now, since it's guaranteed to get that, I save there just in case I get like an ambush or something, so that I can just decide to, you know, I'm not gonna bother with ambushes and just reset that, because it's faster to reset than to take the ambush. Okay, this is getting interesting right now. So I believe Ice Giga's Winter Wolf are also a form of a 1 in 64 or 3 in 64. Usually, like, I get one of them like every 4 to 5 runs on average, so having seen 2 is pretty rare. Okay, just 3 Pisco Demons. So for these Piscos, I could have used the Judgment Staff. We've counted it out that the animation, because the animation of the Judgment Staff is fairly long, that it's about even for 3 attacks. So with the additional menuing, it would be slower for me to use the staff. Okay, so we're gonna heal up our mages. I'm going to hope that my Black Mage is able to survive a Thundara. He might die here. It wouldn't be a big deal if he does. So this is the next boss. This is Evil Eye. Now, this is also... Evil Eye is on a spiked tile, meaning that every time I get into a fight with this guy, or every time I step onto this tile, I get into a fight with this guy. Which is very convenient, actually, because he tends to give a lot of experience. He's one of the highest experience counts in the entire game, especially for, like, the first half of the game. So we're gonna grind, or quote-unquote grind for a bit. I need level 18.5 of this, which takes about minute and a half, maybe 2 minutes. Now, in the all bosses or full bestiary category, as well as in pretty much all of the glitchless categories for PSP and GBA, we'd actually grind out to level 31 to 33, depending on the category. That's to get a better heal spell later called Hilaga, but we don't really need that in PSP, because Hilara will suffice. And if there would be any donations, since we're still grinding anyway, now would be a good time. Okay, I'm assuming that means we... Oh, I actually get an encounter there. It's very rare to get an encounter there. So while we have that downtime, I mean, we're all trying to support a great cause here, and I wanna particularly thank all of the organizers of this marathon for getting us together for such a good cause. I mean, it really is a pleasure to be able to run here, and you know, I'm very thankful for that. And so, you know, quick shout-outs to all of the people that work behind the scenes and stuff. So that's level 18. And that's 18.5. So we need 18.5 so that I will be guaranteed to hit level 19 by the time I actually need to buy some spells, because we're not gonna fight a lot. From this point on, I can also just keep my health high. I don't need to worry about it anymore. So I'm going one last time. That's the last time we're gonna save in this dungeon. We're just gonna try to head out as quickly as possible. So because of the extra levels and stuff, white dragons aren't as dangerous anymore. It's fairly unlikely that even if I were to encounter it, that it would actually kill me. So that's a nice little bonus that we get for this last bit of Cavern of Ice. That being said, it can still happen. It's still scary, but we're just going to take it into account. Good walkout, though. And now we're finally going to make traveling a little bit easier on us, because we've been using canoes, we've been walking, we've used a ship for a good while, but we haven't used the airship yet. Let's go grab that airship right now. Ah yeah, no worries, see? No worries. You take your time. It's all good. So we need to take one last big stretch with this ship. That's just to get into the Ryokan Desert, which is the desert where the airship is hidden, so to speak. Now we could take the little cutscene and show how it was hidden and everything. That's slow because it's skippable. Again, only in PSP version that it's actually skippable. I don't know how it works in the NES version, but it's unskippable in both PSX and GBA at least. So that's some big eyes down. Still getting trolled a little bit by the encounters here. That's not a huge deal though, because this is the Ryokan Desert, and now we're finally going to get okay, maybe one more tile, but we're finally going to get ourselves an airship. Now, the creators of Final Fantasy I, they were a little bit mean, and when they got you the airship, I mean, generally, if you've played a Final Fantasy, you're used to, like, you can land an airship anywhere. It's all good, it's all cool. In FF1, they weren't so kind, unfortunately, and they decided, you know, the airship, it can only ever land on planes. Now, they've been so mean to conveniently put planes spots in very inconvenient places. So we're going to head to the Citadel here, and I'll show you where, this is where we're going to land our airship. It's actually so far away from the Citadel that theoretically it's faster to do this with the ship, just the regular ship, and sail all the way to Citadel. But because it saves about 10 seconds later on airship or on overworld movement with the airship, that makes the airship faster. You can see, like, in this piece of land, like, as long as we walk, the encounter rate tends to be fairly high, at least. Which is why, generally, we prefer using the ship, but, or it would technically be faster to do the ship, but it's only, on average, it's only faster by, like, a second, maybe two. Where you save about 10 seconds on overworld movement, so on average you save, like, 8 seconds. So this is the Citadel of Trials. So, in the NES version, when you talk to this guy, he would actually check if you have the crown. But you need to have the crown anyway, so that was kind of pointless. So nowadays, we just need to talk to the guy. And we're gonna do this little teleporter maze, because, you know, any good RPG has at least one teleporter maze. I mean, if it doesn't have that teleporter maze, it's just not a good RPG. That's just, you know, general rule of the thumb. The Minotaur Zombie, by the way, also being an unrunnable encounter. It's the only unrunnable in this dungeon, except for the 1 in 64 Dragon Zombie. We're forced to fight one Dragon Zombie at the end, but they can appear as a 1 in 64 as well. Whoops. Let's go down here. Getting a pretty bad encounter rate so far. Generally, you get about 1 to 2 encounters on floor 1. This is my 4th one. So, fairly unlucky again. But, I mean, we're fine if we get a little unlucky. That's not a huge deal. The advantage is we get a couple extra levels. Not that levels are particularly useful, but we do still get that, so I guess that's a nice bonus. Oh wow, third unrunnable. This is among the most unfortunate citadels I've had in a long time. So this is the final floor. Now, the reason we do the Citadel is actually the only skippable dungeon in the game. It's completely optional, but by doing the Citadel of Trials, you gain the access to the class upgrade. And class upgrade has a couple nice bonuses. First of all, there's some really good items in the Citadel itself. The healing staff, which we're going to pick up next, being a prime example of that. But then on top of that, there is... getting the class upgrade allows us to get Teleport, which is a spell that would instantly send me back a floor, which we're going to use for similar situations as we saw with Cavern of Earth, where you had to backtrack a bit. Now later on, we'll just have a spell to do that for us, making it significantly faster for us. Nightmares, they are actually runnable, but they're pretty difficult to run from at this point. Our equipment isn't really suited to run from that kind of stuff yet. Later on, we'll get a piece of equipment which will make things easier again. There's one more upgrade in armor that we will get. So, in order to get that class upgrade, we would need to talk to Bahamut, but he will tell us we need some proof. Proof that we're strong warriors and all, so we get the rat's tail, because a tail of a rat is sufficient proof, apparently. I mean, I'd buy it, it makes sense, but... you know, it's a bit of an awkward piece of proof, but we got it, so we can head out of the Citadel. And with that being said, there's a little bit of shopping that we're going to do next, and then after that we're actually going to start the rush for the final couple dungeons. So, time-wise, we're roughly halfway through the game. I'd say a little bit over half. From here on, the game is, I'd say, about 40 minutes left. We're gonna have to do that walk back again. The reason I save, by the way, is because there is a very rare encounter here, the Sandworm, which have a move that could instantly kill characters again. It's called Earthquake. I've only heard of it happen twice, that they actually managed to kill the entire party, because pretty much what has to happen is you need to get that encounter to begin with. It needs to ambush you. It needs to actually use Earthquake, and then it would need to kill all of the characters at the same time. It's only happened twice, I believe. Once in a tournament match, and once during testing. So this is the Dragon Cave, and in the Dragon Cave, the great Bahamut lives. Now Bahamut, he's going to give us a quick class upgrade. So let's go talk to the dude. He's a nice little guy. I mean, he looks like a mean old dragon, but he's a nice guy. We just hand him the tail of a rat, and for that he gives us all kinds of nifty abilities. I mean, I'd take that. I mean, if you give somebody a tail of a rat and then get all kinds of cool abilities for it, I'll take it. So that's the class upgrade done. So we started off with a warrior, a thief, a black mage, and a white mage. Now we have a knight, a ninja, a black wizard, and a white wizard. And the difference really isn't that big. The knight and ninja, they could learn some spells, they could learn some basic magic. We're not really going to use them for that though, because we've got mages after all. In all bosses we actually do use the ability from the ninja to use black magic so that they learn haste. Okay, some quick spell buying, so that's Healara, that's gonna be our main healing spell for the game. And Teleport, just to skip some parts of dungeons. Like, it takes like 10 seconds to pick up the spell. It saves about 3 to 4 minutes, maybe a bit more even. Depending on the RNG, it might be up to like 6 minutes that you save. We're gonna revisit Elfheim quickly. Now, earlier there was a spell shop here, and, you know, ideally we would have just bought the spell back then, but we didn't actually have the magic level to do that, because we need to be of a specific level to even be able to buy them. We weren't that just yet, so We had to skip out on that earlier. Let's do some more crystals. We haven't picked up any crystals since the Earth crystal, like 25-30 minutes ago. So this is Mount Gulk. You'll notice that I'm walking on as much lava as possible. That's actually on purpose. The lava does damage me, but on lava tiles encounters don't spawn. So you'll see I can get through this dungeon very, very easily. Very few encounters. Average is about 1 to 2 encounters over the course of the entire dungeon. That's just because of this kind of stuff. We're gonna use the ethers quickly to heal up my white mage. That's just so that we can use Hilara, heal up back to full, because there are some encounters that would otherwise be able to kill me. Like this Fire Hydra. Fire Hydras have Blaze, which, if everybody's on 1 health, will one-shot the entire party.
Oh, also, heads up, you are just passing an hour in the run.
Okay. That's considering I died earlier, that's fair.
So you still estimate what time now?
Let's see. So generally, you know what, I'm going to ask for the time again in a little bit when I pick up the Rosetta Stone. It's easier for me to tell from there. Because that's generally the second point in the run where we give an estimate.
Okay.
It's, there is a little fetch questing I need to do in between, which I'm not completely sure how much time that takes. I'd say it's an additional 5 minutes, which would be around 137-ish pace, I think.
That's pretty good pace still.
Yeah, it's still a fair pace. Generally, a deathless run, we want to stay under 1 hour 35. With a small death like this, 136, 137 is generally what we're looking at. A lot can still happen, because there is a lot of RNG in the late game. Like, the final dungeon you can lose 2 or 3 minutes, or save 2 or 3 minutes, depending on the RNG. So, there is still a lot of minor little things that can happen. So we saw again the unlocking of a bonus dungeon. Oh wow, actually getting an encounter here before the teleporting out. That's not too common. But it's all good. So we're gonna have to do a little bit of shopping quickly. We need some final items. This is pretty much the final bit of shopping that we're gonna do the entire remainder of the game. So there's a little desert caravan over here. Now, they've managed to capture a ferry, and they're selling it for 40,000 gold. Now, we're the good guys, so we're gonna save this ferry from this caravan. So let's do just that. And on top of that, I'm buying some Giant's Tonics. Now, the Giant's Tonics, we might not even have to use them. Depending on how high my HP is in the final boss, I'm either going to use 1 or 2 of them. It just depends on the final boss, really, and how much health I have by that point. It's hard to tell before then, because we tend to still get some level ups near the end. So as soon as I enter Gaia, we unleash the ferry. Now the ferry, I mean, we just saved his life, and he's going to repay us in a very good way. He's going to get us the Oxy Ale, which is an item that allows us to breathe underwater, which, seeing as how the water crystal is next, could be useful. Just a thought, but it could be. Depending on how Sunken Shrine treats me, we're about 2 to 3 minutes away from the Rosetta Stone. So I think that's...
Yeah, your current time is just now 1:04.
Okay, so... On a good run, depending on how the end game treats me, if I get a really good end game, I'd say probably 133, 134 is best possible. And since there isn't a lot that I can die on anymore, that's... Like, it mostly just depends on how the encounters treat me. So we're gonna have to do a little bit of walking here. We're going to the Sunken Shrine next. Now, most of the other versions of this game, they actually go to the Waterfall Cave first to pick up the Warp Cube. Now, there's, again with the Ice Giga's Winter Wolf, wow, we've seen this rare encounter a lot so far. So, depending, like, back in the day, we actually used to do that as well in PSP, and we would just go there and, you know, pick up the Warp Cube and then go for Sunken. It doesn't have any additional tiles of moving. It doesn't actually lose me any tiles of moving either. But when we were routing this, when we were thinking of new route changes, we actually thought of another item that we could get here that would increase our running chance, and that would be useful in the Waterfall Cave. And on average, that saves us about, I'd say about half a minute to a minute on just that dungeon, just because we can run more easily. So this is Sunken Shrine. This is probably one of the most notorious dungeons in the game in terms of unrunnables. Personally, this is one of my favorite dungeons. It's one of the hardest ones for new runners to get down because there's a lot of little rooms and corridors you can go through. I personally just enjoy it because of the music. The downside of this dungeon, there's actually 3 different kinds of unrunnables in this dungeon. There is the ghosts, the Sahagan Prince in Chief, and there is water elementals. Most elementals are unrunnable, and water is no exception. The only exception being the air elementals we'll see in Tiamat's place. So far we're getting sharks, and even though a lot of them are ambushes, I'm actually fine with that. Sharks are runnable, and that's still faster than getting like a 9 encounter Sahagan Chief pack. Because the problem with Sahagan Prince in Chief, that's the slowest one to get. They're always in 9, and they generally outspeed you. So you get like 9 attack animations before you get to do anything. Sharks, however, only giving me 2 generally. You know, you can see how that's usually faster. So this is 5F. This is the floor of the Rosetta Stone. Now, generally, what we generally say is if you pick up the Rosetta Stone in under an hour, that's world record pace, or potential world record pace. My PV, the console world record, picks it up at 59:59. So that's Rosetta Stone, by the way. What's time right now? See?
Time right now is at 1:07:20.
Okay. So yeah, that's... Yeah, with a good end game, like 134, 135-ish would be possible. It really depends.
Yeah, that's kind of annoying to have, you said 3 minutes of RNG right at the end of the run. You can have a world record pace run and get it ruined there.
There is the last dungeon is notorious for a lot of encounters. There is some really dumb unrunnable stuff you can get. I'll show it off by the time I get there. But you can lose minutes in the final dungeon. Like an average Chaos' Shrine takes about 12 minutes, start to end. A good Chaos' Shrine would be somewhere around 9, a bad could be like 15. So there's a huge variance in how that dungeon can play out. So this is...
Yeah.
So we're about to pick up the last item that we're actually going to get in this dungeon, or actually pretty much the only item in this dungeon we need to get. So earlier I mentioned, like, we would get some extra pieces of equipment here. We're gonna pick up the light axe, which is in this next room. I'm defending, by the way, with my warrior and thief, because they wouldn't kill this pack. The Sahagan Chief would live. Or Sahagan Prince would live. So this is the light axe. With that, we're gonna do some final equipment glitching. I'm gonna do some survival vests on everybody. Basically, that's going to increase my defenses even more, and it's on top of that going to give me yet another speed boost of 5. So now I've got 15 per item per that I have equipped. So it's a total of 45 additional agility. Now I'm actually not going to do that on the White Mage. On the White Mage, I'm going to equip Lordly Robes. What those do is that they grant her an additional 20 magic. So my healing would significantly increase because of that. It is unfortunately going to make her slower than any other character, but in return, like, you know, she actually starts healing enough to do some serious, or to seriously help me out on the final boss. And with that, we're about to hit Kraken. So this is the third elemental fiend. This is where we're gonna get the water crystal. After this, there is still some questing I need to do before we can go for air, but we're a good way into the crystals right now. Now, I think the best Kraken I've ever heard of was around the 1 hour mark. Double Drop has had a run, which at that point is realistically like 125 pace. Unfortunately, that run actually ended up dying in the final dungeon. So that's a prime example where the final dungeon can just screw you over. The current record for this category, by the way, being at 127.01 by Ood Sigma, and then the console world record at 128.23 by me. So this is Kraken. He's, like, you can see, he's like any of the other bosses. He's just a chump. We literally two-shot this guy. Very easy little boss. And that's gonna get us the third crystal. So this is the water crystal. Again, we're gonna see a little dungeon unlock. This is the dungeon to Lifespring Grotto. Now, I don't think I've mentioned anything about these bonus dungeons yet, but these dungeons we see every time that get unlocked like this, they actually hold some bosses of other Final Fantasy games. So this one, for example, Lifespring Grotto, has some bosses for some of the Final Fantasy V bosses in it. Specifically Gilgamesh, Atomos, Shinryu, and Omega. The FF4 dungeon, Hellfire Chasm, has got the 4 elemental fiends for FF4. There's some FF3 bosses in Earthgift, and some Final Fantasy VI bosses as well in Whisperwind Code. They kind of added that as some bonus content, which makes for some really interesting dungeons. So we're now actually going to go to that waterfall cave. This is a very short cave. But there's 2 crucial pieces of equipment we're going to get here. One of them is going to add a whole lot of safety to the run. Like, significantly more safe than we've been ever before. Before that, Chaos actually used to be a pretty big deal. But some of the bosses before then could also just do that, because status effects are still an issue with this setup. I mean, our equipment might be superb, but there is still the status effects. Now, there's an item in here called the Ribbon that actually prevents any status effect, the only exception being the Mind Flyers, who for some reason can still paralyze me. On top of that, it also protects from instant death moves, so really convenient item to get here. And we needed to go there anyway, because there is the Warp Cube, without which we can't ever access Tiamat anyway. So plenty of reasons to be around this place. And so far it's been treating me fairly well. There is one unrunnable in this place. Okay. There's the Green Dragon. It's a 1 in 64 encounter. It's incredibly rare to get it, actually. I've seen it yesterday for the last time in a PlayStation X or PSX run, PlayStation 1 run. And, you know, it's in other categories it'd be pretty devastating. In this one it isn't, but it can be a very annoying encounter to see sometimes, especially since you have to kill it off. The extra experience can be a bonus, though. To make one more safety here, we're going to get into an encounter with some Pyralisks and Cockatrices, and they can all hurt me pretty badly. Or we just run away like that. That's cool. So that's the Warp Cube. Also, like, this is the best text box in the game for obvious reason. Just the buzzword he gives us. I need the chest he's in front of, that's the one. So I'm going to do a very interesting way of doing the equipment glitch here. I'm first going to glitch a ribbon into the Gigantaxe, and then from the Gigantaxe I'm going to make ribbons again. And it's effectively going to make 1 ribbon into 4 ribbons. It's a really weird setup of the glitch, but it actually just allows us to get 4 of those instead of just the 1. Now, you may have noticed I equipped the ribbon to shield, and this is the first time I actually equipped something to shield. The problem with the shield slot is when the game tries to pull up the animation for it, it generally hard locks the game. At least most of the pieces of equipment would if they're not a shield, because, you know, it's trying to get a shield up, but the shield isn't there. However, the ribbon happens to correspond with the ID of one of the swords in the game. Because of that, we can still equip it. It's actually the animation of the barbarian sword. So because of that, we can safely equip it without risk of hard locking. Going to make a quick stop in Melmond again. This is the last time we're going to visit this town, and it's because of this guy. So we picked up the Rosetta Stone earlier, and what that slate does is it allows us to learn any language very, very quickly. We're going to learn that, or we're going to use that to learn Lufenian, which is something we need in order to gain access to Tiamat's dungeon again, because we need the chime. Just going to teleport out of this town, because it's slightly faster than moving around. Saves about 3 seconds. Now, I do still need the chime, which is held in Lufenia. Now, we're going to fly over Lufenia in a bit. That's Lufenia, and as I mentioned earlier, they were pretty dumb with their parking spots, because this is the parking spot. So we're going to have to do like 3 minutes of walking just to get there. Going to take the bit of the lake here just to avoid some more forest. Now, the walking in general wouldn't be so bad if it wasn't for the fact that there's actually some unrunnable stuff around here too. So not only do we need to walk some ridiculous amount of land for no apparent reason, because there's actually a huge field in Lufenia itself. Like, we could easily park on that, but the game just decided we couldn't. But on top of having to walk that, we actually have to beat through a lot of unrunnable encounters. You can lose about 2 minutes between a good walk to Lufenia and a bad one. This one's looking pretty average so far. Okay, that's a very unfortunate place to get an encounter. So Lufenia, you'll notice immediately the amount of NPCs this place has, and it's not unlikely to get blocked by NPCs somewhere. Oh wow, we actually didn't! Neat. You can lose a couple seconds here just because NPCs tend to block you. So you get the chime, and now we're going to head towards the final crystal of the game, the air crystal. Now, in order to do that, we actually do need to head back to our ship one more time. Winter Wolf Ambush can be a little bit annoying because of Ice Storm. It's a pretty slow animation. Luckily, Ice Storm doesn't actually do a lot of damage anymore, so we don't really need to worry about it. It's just slow. So there you saw the animation for the ribbon. That sword is a ribbon. Don't ask me why that would be a ribbon, but the IDs tend to just happen to correspond, which does allow us to actually use it. So, I mean, from a speedrun perspective, it's very convenient that we can actually use the shield slot like this. Again, pretty average walk so far. It's not like we've not had any particularly good points, but we haven't really had the bad points in a while as well, so nothing to worry about. So on the land here, there's actually another 1 in 64, and it's actually one of the most notable 1 in 64s. There's a couple 1 in 64s that are unique only to that spot, and you can't find them anywhere else. This is one of those. There is, I believe, 4 of them in the PSP version, and I believe 6 in the GBA version, that you can only find in one particular spot. So for a full bestiary run, you'd pretty much have to grind out that one encounter for a while there. The full bestiary record, by the way, being a little over 11.5 hours. So this is Mirage. Mirage is just a very short dungeon. It kind of has a mid-boss near the end, the Blue Dragon. We could encounter that randomly. It's a 1 in 64 encounter of this dungeon. It's not too common to see it. This dungeon isn't too bad. The encounter rate is pretty bad, but most of the encounters aren't, so we get through fairly quickly still. Still getting... Okay, so the vampires... It's actually very interesting with the vampire. If there were to be only one vampire in an encounter, it would be unrunnable. It doesn't actually appear anywhere, but the game is programmed that if it has one vampire, it becomes unrunnable. Because that would correspond with the vampire we fought earlier as a boss. It's never... Nowhere in the game do you actually only get one other than the boss, so it doesn't actually apply anywhere, but it is programmed that way in the game's code, which is a little bit of an interesting little side effect, I think. So that's the Blue Dragon. Again, easy little boss. No big deal. Hellhound's not a big deal either. So we're going into Flying Fortress, and this is the before last dungeon of the game. There's only one other dungeon after this. This one's 5 floors. We're going to have to head up all the way to Tiamat, which is protecting the last of the crystals. You know, this is the Flying Fortress, named obviously because this is where we get the airship, or the air crystal. So it's you know, high up in the air. This tends to be a very quick dungeon. This is also where you get the adamantite, which you need in order to get Excalibur. So if you want to get Excalibur, you gotta go to like the bottom left of this floor. You get the adamantite from which you can make Excalibur. Okay, 4F is an interesting little grid-like floor. You always just, as long as you just go diagonally, or quote-unquote diagonally, it works out. Doesn't really matter which way I walk. I could go bottom right, or bottom left, or top right. But I have a tendency to just always go top left. It's just runner preference, really. I'm actually going to, once I hit the next floor, I'm actually going to make one of the last safety saves in the game. Now I'm doing this at the start of the floor because this floor has a 1 in 64 encounter. That would be very hype to see. It's called a War Mech. It gives the most experience of any encounter in the game. It's 1 in 64. It gives 32,000 experience in gold. Very, very rare encounter, but insanely good encounter. It gives me like instantly 2 level ups if I were to find it. We have a saying that getting a War Mech means world record confirmed. No matter how bad the run is, that's world record confirmed. I don't know if the current world record actually has it though. That's Tiamat, and with that we've now finished off our crystal hunt and we can travel back in time. So we're going to see one more bonus dungeon unlock. This is Whisperwind Cove, where we would find the Final Fantasy VI bosses. Specifically Typhon, Ultros, Phantom Train, and Death Gaze. And after this, we're just going to head out of this tower, get into our airship, and head towards that final dungeon. So, how are we doing on time, by the way?
You're currently at 1:23:30.
Okay.
So it's still estimating a little bit over 1:35, or?
Yeah, definitely. It's about 14 minutes left, so it's like 1:37-ish. We should still at least go a couple minutes underestimate though, so that might help at least a little bit in getting everything back on schedule.
Yeah, I think also some of the runs going overnight will help too.
Yeah. Okay. Then let's head into that final dungeon, shall we? So, you may remember this place as being the very first dungeon we entered. Well, the first dungeon is also the last dungeon. It is also the gateway to the final bonus dungeon, the Labyrinth of Time. It's this bonus dungeon you see the guy walk to right now. It's only in the PSP version. It's considered one of the most difficult dungeons in the game, if not the most difficult dungeon in the game. Especially new runners tend to really like runners of all bosses and stuff tend to really struggle with it. Times varying. A little example would be I've once done a race with Lenofis, I believe current number 3 in all bosses, and he knew all of the bonus dungeons except that one really well. And we went into that dungeon 20 minutes apart. I had about a 20-minute lead, I think. Then my bonus dungeon took about half an hour, and his took closer to an hour and a half. That's just because of how difficult that dungeon is. Okay, good start of the Chaos Shrine. This is where the RNG sets in the most, these first couple floors. This is where a lot of unrunnable stuff appears. So this is going to determine a big part as to how the start is going to go. I haven't seen any green dragons in here yet, up to Death Eye. That was actually a really fast Death Eye split. Are we like 125?
Yeah, 125.50.
Okay. On a good Chaos Shrine, 135, 136. It's, generally, we estimate, on average, it takes about 11 minutes from the Death Eye fight. But a lot can vary. Like, you can get unrunnables. Dragon zombies are actually not the worst unrunnable around here. There's some pretty nasty ones, especially on this floor, the Ice Gigas Winter Wolf that we've seen, I think, already 3 or 4 times. It's a really annoying little encounter to get. Almost at the end of like the worst part of this dungeon. We did actually end up getting one more of these. So I'm fighting this with my mages. I think my black mage, with the black mage it's actually a range, whether I kill it or not. I didn't. I thought he might be able to tank it. The white mage is guaranteed to kill. I thought the black mage would too, but I miscalculated somewhere. That's not a huge deal though. So only one of those, meaning pretty good so far. We're going to now actually head into the basement floors of Chaos Shrine. We're back on floor 1. Now, might I remind you, we are 2,000 years into the past compared to where this game started. So it's the story at this point. We've traveled back in time to refight Garland, which is the very first boss of the game, who traveled back in time, created a time loop through which he would never die. But the only way to really stop him would be to travel back and, you know, stop him 2,000 years past, as well as in the present. Now we've killed him in the present, now we're gonna kill him in the past, just to break the time loop for once and for all. Purple worms, another unrunnable encounter. These white dragons, by the way, they are one of the few dragons that's actually runnable. Various runners tend to just kill them off to begin with, because it is kind of risky to just, you know, try and run away. White dragons tend to be particularly dangerous because of Ice Storm, which does quite a bit of damage. And now that we've reached the basement floors, every single one of the basement floors actually has a kind of sub-boss, and you might remember these guys from before, because we've actually fought them earlier on in the game. Every floor has one of the earlier fiends on it, so this is the Lich floor, which is the first fiend we had to fight. I'm going to save before him because he has Flare, and I should be able to tank it, but just to be on the safe end. Oh, I actually get an encounter before him. That's interesting.
And I'll announce a donation right here real quick. We have a donation from ZNT Sato that came in a while ago, but I think since it's in euros, it hasn't showed up on our US dollars page. But that's a donation of €5, which is like $5.6. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Saito.
And it says, the donation message just says, "This is for Cruel."
Saito. Yeah. Saito is a Lufia 2 runner, and a very good friend of mine. So thank you, Saito, for the donation. That is
and
fantastic,
that also,
dude.
that brings us up to $100.
Nice. That is quite a good achievement this early on in the marathon. And
yes, it is.
with that, shoutouts to all of the people that just donated. It's all going to a great cause, and it's fantastic that we've reached a goal like this early on already. So thank you everybody for that. So this is the second basement floor. This is the Merilith floor. And Merilith isn't as deadly as Lich is. Lich is really the only fight, at least in the any% PSP run, that we kind of worry about. In GBA and in PSX and in Glitchless as well, we kind of worry about Kraken and Tiamat. But for this category, it's, you know, they're not a huge deal. So that's Merilith done. That leaves 3 floors left, and that gets me to the most RNG heavy floor left. We can get trolled by water elementals, or we can get a lot of encounters that are actually just runnable. The difference between a good floor and a bad floor here is, I'd say, roughly 2 minutes just on this floor. Generally, RNG kind of tends to even out over the course of the floors, but this is definitely one that is very detrimental to runs, especially because it's the last bad floor in the game. So this is the first unrunnable, the Water Elemental. We haven't actually seen them before, but they appeared in Sunken Shrine as well as a fairly rare encounter. The more I see of these, the worse, obviously, because every time I have to kill them, I lose about 8 seconds. They are getting me some extra levels from the looks of it, which does add to the safety on the final boss, at least. Okay, this is looking like a really bad Kraken floor, which means we're probably going to end up along a 137-ish, considering how it's been going so far. I might be off a bit, but... Okay, so we're gonna do the next of the Elemental Fiends. So this is Kraken. You might remember him since we fought him like 25 minutes ago. Maybe even, I think even less, like probably more like 20 minutes ago. He's become a bit stronger, but you know, he's still a pushover really. Didn't get great rolls there, but we should be able to kill him off fairly quickly now. Oh, that's cracking down. So with that, there's 2 floors left. There's the Tiamat floor and then the Chaosish floor. Now on the Tiamat floor, you can still get encounters. There's actually another unique one in 64 on that floor. The Iron Golem. I've actually never seen it outside of Full Bestiary, at least not in my own runs. And then the next floor is encounterless, so we're as good as done here. Now this is the first fight we're actually going to have to use, like, quote-unquote strats to make this fight faster. We're going to use Haste with our Black Mage, and what that does, Haste in this game effectively doubles my attack. So it's a very overpowered move. And by casting that on the ninja, I almost guarantee a 2-turn fight, whereas if I wouldn't, it would like be about 50% whether it's 2 turns or 3 turns. And Tiamat down. And with that, we really just have 1 boss left. Now I gotta say, this next boss, he's known as a very, very annoying boss. He can actually kill me. It's not too common, but it's happened a few times in runs before. So we're gonna do one last bit of equipment glitching, only on the white mage, just to add to the safety of this fight. So heal him up like that. We're gonna get him the golden staff, which is the very reason why I picked up the gauntlets earlier. That would transform into the golden staff, which I would use for this particular fight. And with that, we're entering the final boss fight. So this is Garland. You may remember him from about 3 minutes into the game. And he's back. But 2,000 years passed, and he's quote-unquote more powerful now. I mean, we need not worry. He's still a pushover, really. Nothing to worry about here. My health isn't looking too good, so I'm going to have to use those Giant's Tonics for now. Where is it? There it is. Use Hilara with my white mage, and I'm going to start hasting my characters just so that I can actually do some damage. Blizzaga is a really good move to start with. The ribbons block about 50% of the damage from Blizzaga. Ooh, I'm seeing some Kevin Turtles appear in chat. Well, I mean, with all these Kevin Turtles, we should definitely be able to do this now. Let's not flee, though. That might not be the smartest move at this point. So this guy, he's got 20,000 health. Time is when this guy flashes white. And it should be about 1 or 2 more minutes.
Okay, you're at 136.
Okay.
Just by the way.
Yeah, we got some pretty bad floors on especially the Kraken floor, unfortunately. But still, at least it's under 140, and anything under 140 is something I can be happy with a small death in it. So yeah, Chaos, he can give me a pattern with a lot of physical moves, and he can give me patterns with a lot of magic moves. Ideally, I want to see a lot of physical hits. So far, it's mostly been magic, and it looks like I'm getting the bad pattern here. Bad pattern is about half a minute slower, so it's kind of unfortunate. With the Giant's Tonics, we will survive no matter what, and at this point, it's pretty much hold X to win. I'll call time when it hits, but since I think you're retiming on your own screen, aren't you?
Yes.
Yeah. So, like I said, he flashes white. The entire screen flashes white in a bit, and that's when it's done. But I'll call it out. It should be 1 or 2 more turns at this point. And that's time. So that was Final Fantasy 1. Before I go, quick shout out to the organizers of the marathon. Thank you for allowing me to do this game in your marathon. Quick shout out to the entire Final Fantasy community for all the work they put into it and all the runs we've been doing. Yeah, that was
the time was a. Oh, by the way, the time was a 1:37:57, but it accidentally just started the timer again. So.
Okay. Well, it's considering the death. It's not a fantastic time, but it's not terrible either. So yeah, I think with that we're switching over to what was that game called again?
We're about to switch over to Rhythm Heaven Fever by Gab Gab, and I think we have some Rhythm Heaven Fever fans in the chat.
Well then, Gab Gab, best of luck on your run, and thanks again for everybody that donated and everybody that got me to actually do this run tonight. And good luck with the rest of the marathon.
Thank you, and good job